All right. All right. Good afternoon. YouTube's telling me I'm live, so I suppose that means that I am indeed live. Good to know. Happy Monday. It's Monday as I'm recording this. Just a quick channel note. I'm going to be out of town for the rest of the week starting tomorrow. So don't expect a lot from me between now and then. I have actually on the main channel, I've preloaded some stuff. So you'll get some. There's a video coming out tomorrow, and I might try to get a video out for Friday. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. So if you enjoy stuff here on the channels, then maybe a few things to look forward to. Other than that, I'll be mostly out of pocket. I was browsing. I don't want to say was it last week? Gosh, time gets away. Sometime fairly recently, I was over on the Shadowdark Discord, and I saw someone from there post a couple of files up that went into some hexcrawling rules. So I thought we could take a look at those, see what they're on about, see if there's anything interesting to glean from them. I will have to probably look at these since I have a kind of hexcrawling supplement for Shadowdark now. I'll probably need to look at these and maybe tweak what I'm doing, see what I'm doing, what I'm doing differently from what they're doing, what they've expanded into, just to make sure that I'm kind of not necessarily doing exactly what they do, because that was the point, but kind of, using what they're doing as a guidance and then differing from it with intention, if indeed I have an intention. Okay, so this one, so there were two PDFs that were thrown up on the Discord, and I think it was by someone kind of official. So I don't think these are gray market kind of things. I don't know. This one is one page. I'm not sure if this comes out of the core rulebook or where it comes from. It's just a single page that was clipped from page 26 of whatever document they were working in. I'm not sure what that was. So I have some unknowns, but we'll hash that out. The second one I've got is actually Cursed Scroll 4, or at least part of it. I'm not sure if it's the whole thing. Again, I just pulled these directly from the Discord, the files that were shared, and haven't done anything with them yet. You're looking at them, or you're going to be seeing me looking through them for the first time, as normally with these kind of things. I'm just trying to get my tools set up. I like this little tool for drawing on stuff, so I'm just getting that fired up so I can use it. There we go. Yay. Okay. So we'll do the single page one first, and then we can go look at the bigger one. And then if we have time left over, I don't know, we can do whatever. Hexcrawling, this presents an alternate version of Shadowdark RPG's overland travel rules. All right, so alternate version. Travel per day. Hexes are 6 miles across. Okay, that's fine. PCs can enter a number of hexes per day based on travel method. So here we have that travel method. So, right there. Right. So if you're walking 4 hexes a day, mounted 6 hexes a day, sailing 8 hexes. On the one hand, I really appreciate that they put the sailing stuff in there, because like in my own stuff, I don't tend to do with the ocean, because I wouldn't want to do the ocean the same. I have a feeling, I haven't really thought about it too much, but if I were going to think about how I'd want to expand the hexes, that ocean is one of those things where I think I would expand the hexes at a certain point, change the sizing so that you might some multiple, so it's in line. So I wouldn't go, we're using 6 mile hexes, and the next one is, I don't know, 14. I wouldn't do something like that, but I might do 24 for the deep water. So you'd have and I would prefer 3 mile hexes. Okay, but let's just say for 6 around, your coastal areas where there are islands, archipelagos, whatever. And then you get into the open ocean, and it's like 24-mile hexes. Just because I think it's kind of a different vibe, different animal. But of course, you can also do it here with just increasing your amount of hexes per day. Though, I don't know if your rates of sailing, I guess, with the winds or whatever are, I mean, I don't know. I guess I really don't know what the sailing rates are versus other rates. Whether sailing is it faster to go on boat than by horse? I think they're often different. I don't even know that usually I don't even think of horses being that much faster than walking. It's just that you just don't have to carry stuff. I mean, if you're a courier, if you're racing across something, sure, mounted, but often over a long distance, when you're doing kind of day sort of hex crawly kind of distances, they don't really average out. I mean, that was one of the big evolutionary human strengths, was the fact that we could just walk for long distances without constantly having to stop and rest and all this stuff, which other animals couldn't, so that you could walk alongside horses or buffalo or these other things. And sure, if they went to gallop, yeah, they could race away from you, but they can't keep that pace up, and they got to stop and they do whatever. Whereas as a person, as a human, you can just kind of walk, so that your long distance walking pace is sufficient to keep you at least at the same, if not faster than those other creatures overall. But that's fine, right? So 6 times 4, 24. It's probably a little bit faster than I want, but people have all kinds of it's very personal. Like, it's a very personal number, these numbers. There's nothing wrong with this one. It might be a bit faster than I want, but that's totally fine. Okay, so that's just your travel method. So movement. PCs move from hex to hex as a group while traveling over land. Shift into combat or crawling rounds if an encounter occurs. What is a crawling round? Is that must be kind of your dungeon crawl? Is that what did they call it? Crawling rounds? I'm gonna have to get up on my Shadowdark lingo if I'm gonna be looking at a lot of Shadowdark stuff. Check for a random encounter twice a day and twice overnight, with a 1 in 6 chance each time. So this is a bit more than kind of, say, BX. BX is really just one per day. Sometimes I think that's not enough. Sometimes I want a little bit more. Sometimes I kind of like day and night. Really, if you have different things are showing up in the day and in the night, I sort of like that. And then I think sometimes it depends. I don't know. I'll go. Sometimes they're entering a new hex. I like to kind of check, because what is this hex of area? What differentiate what's here versus what's there, kind of thing. So, but here, regardless of how many hexes you happen to be going across, twice in a day, twice overnight, that's fine. A 1 in 6 chance each time. So they're not. I think what people seem to like about Shadowdark is, and this is my impression. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but it's that kind of simplification of things. So this is definitely a simpler method. Instead of looking at the terrain and things like that, you're just saying 1 in 6 chance. I will say this: I'm not sure I love this, because when you look at hexcrawling and you're looking at the decision points, excuse me, you're looking at a party's decision points when on hexcrawl. One of the main decisions that a party will have is what terrain to go through. And I really appreciate in a hex crawl that terrain choice is important. So you might look at it, and you can let's say they have a map. Let's say they have some kind of partial map of the area, or even a complete map of the area. And they're looking and they say, look, we could take the road that's on the plains and the grasslands and it's going around, but that's going to take us 4 days. We kind of need to get there quicker than that. Well, we could cut across the swamp and we can get there in a day and a half. Okay. Classically, there is an understanding that the swamp's going to be more difficult. Now, I don't know. When you get to 4 days, I'm sure someone could calculate up and say, well, 4 days at a 1 in 6 chance is this percentage versus a 3 in 6 chance, but you're only making one check. Probably 4 rolls of 1 in 6. I mean, I'm sure we could go to any days, figure it out, whatever. You can figure out the odds, whatever, right, where it makes sense. But you're making those choices. Okay, well, higher chance of encounter in the swamp, but it's quicker versus especially on a road or something. Even if they maybe have a more chance of encounter, they're probably more friendly, or not horrible encounters. So you put all that stuff together and you go, well, we could make a choice, and that choice has meaning. When it's the same, when all these things are the same, and also in fact how long it takes, right? So all these things. So all these things just kind of get boiled out in terms of terrain. It just takes away that decision point. So now what does it matter? If you're in the right, because here's another thing. If your hexes per day, your travel method, notice this has nothing to do with what terrain you're in. You could be in mountains. Or actually, that's a bad mountain. You could be in mountains. You could be in a hill. You could be in grassland. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. Same thing here. This is all the same. Now, I think in Shadowdark, they've got biome encounter tables, right? So, you're in the Arctic, you get this. You're in the jungles, you get that. You're in the tundra, you get that. But again, that doesn't take into account terrain. So I want that terrain to be meaningful, and I guess at least for this particular alternate version, I want that terrain to be meaningful. I want you to look at it and say, we could go this way into the woods, or this way to the grass, or that way into the hills, and it means something in terms of our speed, in terms of the danger, or just in terms of just overall stuff. Like there's meaning there. But it is what it is, and we'll get into the other supplement shortly. So now we have weather. Check the weather each day by rolling a d6. On a 1, the weather is terrible. On a 6, it's exceptionally good. This I do like, right? This is really easy. It just, hey, you know what? And you could just figure out, right? If you've rolled a 3, it's okay. And yeah, granted, you're not getting rain or whatever. You just figure it out. Like it's February. Okay, what is kind of meh weather in February? What is terrible weather in February? And of course, depending on where you are. I'm in the Northeast. So what is I would say today is a pretty good. Today would probably be, in terms of February, not being concerned with it being too warm, I say this is probably about a 4. It's a little bit gray out, but it's not super chill, not super cold. It's fine, right? This could be a 4. And now you can figure that out. So that's absolutely fine. And of course, a little note about weather can impact movement visibility. That's fine. I mean, now it's not telling you how any of that works, just saying, hey, it can. I don't know. This is one of those things I just need to figure out in terms of the kind of the community around Shard. How do they feel? Do they like the Shadowdark? How do you like that? Do you like where it's just like, yeah, it impacts it or it doesn't? It's kind of up to you. But we're not telling you how. Not that it's difficult, but some games might put in a table of, oh, hey, that it's terrible, so do this or that, or do whatever. I think they could have probably made a little something in here to kind of take those numbers and manipulate these numbers in a way that would have been pretty easy, but they didn't, which is fine. But for folks who are playing Shadowdark, you guys let me know if this kind of the sort of specificity or lack thereof that they're giving you, if that's just what you want because you as a GM get to kind of do it, or would you like more? Because I'm also obviously looking at it from as have a supplement that is kind of in progress, that of wood and wold, that is kind of is in a state, but I mean it to continue to be updated. And I'm looking like these are things I can provide. But if there's things that Shadowdark folks don't really want, then I won't bother. Right? Hey, Mac. Mac says, how weather can affect the terrain or the party because of the terrain adversely, something to consider. I live near the Badlands. Strong, sustained rainstorms have much different effects than forests. Yes. Yeah, right. And right, exactly, Mac. And that's just one thing, right? Here they don't give you any of that. It just says, it can impact these things. you figure it out. And like I said, I'm curious as to, is that what people want? Which is basically just, yes, it can. I mean, it's almost like, why even have this paragraph here at all? Because you're not actually offering anything. You're just saying, yes, you can do that. I know, and I'm not actually in favor, I'm not someone to say like, yeah, get rid of that paragraph, because I think it's good to make sure that people know that, yes, this stuff is, you can use these things. You have permission to look at the weather and say, I rolled really badly on the weather, therefore you're not going to get the walking distance you were getting. I'm totally fine with that. But at the same time, it's not actually helping you, because it's not giving you any idea of what those things could and should mean. It's just like, yes, use them. Okay. All right, now we have terrain. All right, so maybe here's where we're going to get some terrain. So here we have terrain. Difficult terrain, such as swamps, forests, or mountains, require 2 hexes to enter. Okay, so they're doing this thing. All right, so swamps, forests, and mountains require 2 hexes. So this looks like you're getting kind of a, in essence, this is really what it seems like is you're getting travel points in a way. Probably should not be trying to write this out. So it seems like at the beginning of the day, you're like, okay, you have 4 hexes for the points. If you want to go in here, it costs 2 hexes. I mean, I guess you don't have to use points, but at some point you're going to be like, well, we only want 3 hexes. Can we go in the woods? Like, nope, because that takes 2 hexes to enter. So it seems like once you're in them, well, I guess that's every hex, right? PCs cannot enter impassable terrain such as lava lakes or sheer cliffs using standard modes of travel. Okay, that's fine. So this is kind of interesting. So I guess this is for, I don't know if it's for every hex. I guess I don't know. I guess you could figure out whatever you want. But anyway, you need to have two hexes left of movement to enter it. But here again, it's just one of those things. Well, is that every time, or is it if you have 3 hexes of contiguous swamps? Is it on the first one and then you're back to normal, or is it always 2? The way it's written is not clear because it doesn't say. Well, I guess here it kind of makes it. It's a weird thing entering the hex. Entering the hex, which I didn't really consider before. PCs, I'm just going back to PCs move from hex to hex. Right, but they don't call it entering hexes, but then here they do call it entering hexes. I don't know. I'm going to say it's probably for every hex, would be my interpretation. But I could see arguments for either one. Food and water. PCs can go 3 days without consuming a ration. They take 1d4 con damage per day. After that, death at 0. A PC can forage for 1 ration a day with an int check. Okay. So we got some foraging rules. Really simple. Doesn't matter where you are. You're in a desert, you're in a mountain, you're in a rainforest. You can get 1 ration per day. Max says, reminds me of terrain movement in BattleTech. Yeah, I'm not familiar with BattleTech, the rules especially. So, but it makes, I think a lot of games have these similar kind of point. This is why I kind of put like a travel point system. You have so many movement points or travel points, and you can spend them to do things. And I guess if I was going to do this, I might just make this player facing so they can make those decisions. That way they can kind of, especially if they have a map, they can plot out, well, in a day, how far can we go? Well, we can go here, and then it's going to cost us 2, so we can go kind of 2 grass hexes, and then 1 we can then enter the forest. But they're doing this thing, I think Twilight 2000 also is where basically it only had difficult terrain and the normal terrain. I think it doesn't have any of the gradations. And then finally, pushing. At the start of the day, PCs can choose to push. They move an additional 50% of their speed, increase the random encounter chance to 2 and 6 that day. PCs can't forage on a day that they push. Okay, this is fine. It's just, you want to kind of forced march, quick march, double march. So you have an option to go faster. You have to pick at the start of the day, which I think I understand because you're adding these things. I think I would probably amend this that you can. So I think they're not using. If you notice here, there's no. So in a lot of hex systems, including my own, you have concepts about sort of your travel turn or your you want a Hexcrawling turn or an exploration turn, whatever it is, and then you get so many of those per day, and you kind of do this in that level. This one you're doing it on a daily level. You can travel this much per day, right? Travel per day. The unit here is a day. So therefore, because you're doing on a per day basis, you have to choose to push at the beginning of a day. However, I would want to fix that. Or this is probably something I go, yeah, I like this idea, but I would say you can do it at a particular turn, because what if you're doing something, it's kind of like, I don't know, something's happened. You're doing your walk, you're doing a normal walk, you run into a force of orcs or somebody, and you're like, oh gosh, we got to get to where we're going, and we can't go at the same pace. We want to go faster. By the book, you can't, because you didn't push at the beginning of the day, so now you're stuck walking normal speed. And it's just like, no, you can. Why? We're not physically incapable of doing it. I mean, I suppose you could argue, well, you're too exhausted to start double marching or whatever. But it's like, no, we can do it. So I would keep some kind of turn basis. Therefore, you could be a little bit more granular with those actions and say, well, heck, yeah, we're not able to push the whole day, but we can start pushing from now. We got the afternoon. We could try to push till sunset or whatever it is. So I would probably. allow that. But these are very, really simple rules. Like I said, I'm not super familiar with I don't know which book this is in, and I'm not super familiar with what the basic rules are, but hey, it'll work. Hey, Ian, it'll work in a pinch. And like I said, for this one, I think the advantage of this is just very, very simple. This is a really simple way to do it. Now we get to curse scroll number 4. And I mentioned this before, but I don't know if this is the complete curse scroll number 4 or an excerpt of cursed scroll number 4, or if it's an earlier version, not final. I have no idea. But we got some hexy stuff in here. Hey, Ian. But first we get a hex generation page. All right. Roll or choose a starting terrain from the hex terrain table. Danger level begins at unsafe. Okay. Generate new hexes by rolling on the new hex table and referring to the hex terrain table. Treat steps on the hex terrain table as a circular loop that jumps back to the beginning. So, right, you're kind of, I guess you're going to be sort of going in a direction like that, or maybe like that. And then also they'll, loop around. Something like that. All right, so detail. So we get a new hex. We would roll for a new hex. We get the current terrain plus 1 step. Same as the current terrain plus 2 steps, or roll a new hex terrain. So for example, you're in the grassland and you're going to go towards forest, jungle. You're going to kind of go this way. So everything is interesting. You can't go the other way. It's funny because I've played around with a lot of these, but my problem is always that you can find different things kind of close to each other. So they're just making a choice. So you're going to go from, if you start off in the grasslands, you could either go to the forest or you can go to the river. There is not anything to go backwards. I guess it's just how they don't want it. Max says that Kelsey's coming out with her Hexcrawl stuff separately in its own zine or accessory booklet. She'll announce it on her website Discord when finished by the summer. She knows it's a work in progress. Okay. This stuff's it's just interesting because my curiosity here is you have this 2d6 table, and you could easily break these up differently so that you could have the ability to move this way and this way. It's just a really interesting choice that if you start off in the grasses, now granted you could roll 12 and then roll something, but that it speaks to me weird that if you start off in the grasses, that getting to a swamp is going to be a really weird thing, or like river and swamp are so far apart that it's 1, 2, and then you have a river or coast, but then the next jump is ocean. So the one nice thing is, like, I don't have rules for ocean or coast in my game. I kind of have water, like lake, and I just think, like, give it up to you to whether you want it to be the ocean or want it to be a lake or whatever, because it's one of those things that just gets difficult. So I appreciate that. Hey, you've got this. Hey, you've got that on there. At the same time, I imagine there should be a lot of river hitting other things before the river hits the ocean. Whereas here, it's you're either going to get more river, or there's a good chance, or you're going to just jump over to get a mountain. So interesting. Maybe we'll have to go through and try it out. Probably beyond the scope of this stream, but maybe I'll have to come back to it. Or we'll see. Maybe if at the end that we got time, maybe I'll fire up Worldographer. We can throw it in there. Okay, so we got new hexes, roll in the hex table, roll in the hex. Great. And then we also set some danger levels. Max says, see, I would put river, wetland, swamp together and coast, ocean together. Yes, I've done that too, right? Yeah. So kind of coast. I separate river from, well, it depends. I kind of have both. But yeah, I would connect those. And yes, swamps and river feel like they should be connected. Yeah, there's some different ways to do it, but it's just, And it's just an interesting way to, like I said, you could have it. I like this kind of setup, but you could change this up using 2d6, but have it be a mirror so that you can have minuses on one side, pluses on one side, and even if you wanted to have roll new terrain or something like that, you could have it. You could even have it on the 1 and the 12, or the 2 and the 12, right? You could have like 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of thing, 6, 8, and then 9, 10, 11. So you could do some stuff to make this table a little bit more flexible. It's just interesting, and if, like I said, we get to the end and we have time, we can look at it and try it in Worldographer. I don't know how much stuff there is here, so let's see. So okay, so points of interest. We have a couple of types here. We've got hidden, visible once the PC spent 1 hex of travel to search, obvious, visible whenever the hex is visible, occupied, a single faction controls a location, contested 2 or more factions control. So then we have essentially, so this is cool. So you basically get you're rolling 2d6, but there's essentially two different, really it's 2 different columns that are combined. So you can be hidden, empty. Obviously, if it's, well, it doesn't have to be hidden. I guess I was going to say obvious. No, it's not obvious. If it's hidden, it could still be occupied or contested. Oh, here it is down here. So they have, basically you have three different options here, 3 different options. You could have this in 2 columns, basically, instead you're rolling for it. So hidden and empty, hidden and contested, hidden and occupied, obvious and empty, obvious and occupied, obvious and contested. Right. So, or sorry, I should say it's two types of points and 3 levels of occupation. And this is some watered down apple cider for the working man. How the heck do I manage to spill apple cider on myself? Going from my mouth? God, what a goof. Okay. And we have some points of interest, descriptor, location, and feature. What does that mean? How are you supposed to use this? Am I missing something? All right, so this points of interest thingamajiggy here. We've got, you're rolling a d12, we have descriptor. Got location. And we have a feature. So you're rolling a d12. So what happens if you get, I guess if it's just, if you don't get them, then there's nothing. So if you, I don't know, I'm not sure. Are you supposed to roll? I imagine you're rolling it 3 times. So you roll for descriptor. So it might just be nothing or nothing. Or you get infested, haunted, unnatural, pristine, destroyed, overgrown, new, fortified, crumbling. Then you can get the actual location, which could be a monster nest, a cave, a rock formation, a treasure cache, a dwelling, camp, tower, keep, village, temple, village, castle, or city. And then only on I guess, a 2 and 12, 2 out of 12 chance, you might get a path to another location or road to a settlement. So I guess you roll these, and if you just get blank, then I guess it's blank. Nothing. I think you could have more features. I feel like just having 2, you could spread this out a bit. I don't know. Max says the blanks might be for you to fill in each time, or it's just plain old boring. Yeah, could be. Just plain old, it's just a village. Or a castle, but it could be, yeah. I mean, I don't mind it so much in the descriptors, though. I don't know. I just feel like I would just add, it's almost really it's kind of a stylistic thing. Is I would feel pressured by myself to fill in the table. So it's kind of bold to say, no, I'm going to just leave blank. Leave it blank. I think with the features, and yes, I would definitely want to fill. I think this is where, and this is where I think maybe it would be nice to have some kind of guidance, because here's where you can put all your, maybe your plot stuff, like clue. Ugh, sorry about this, but this mouse. Clue to something. You know, an enemy. Something like that, right? You know, just put in just some stuff. And it's a little bit weird because villages are going to probably have paths. Like these are probably all going to have. You can't look. There's no way you can have a city, and it's like, well, there's a city here, but nope, it doesn't have a path to another location or a road to a settlement. Like that doesn't make any sense. So, you know, I would almost factor these more into the type. This to me is more of a part of really of this. Maybe if you're hidden, yeah, there's not going to be many paths. If you're a city, something, you know, whatever, it's, you know, I would probably want to chain that kind of stuff together. So fill them in. I think the thing is here, and it's neither here nor there, but there's not any guidance. So we can only just make assumptions about how they want us to use that table because they're not saying anything. Fill those in. You know, this is where I would just put something like, yeah, use your own plot points. These are like the first 10 are things, you know, your adventure. There's an NPC, there's a whatever, and that down here, you know, I don't know. But I would say that some of these are always going to have like a temple. It's probably always going to have a path to another location, road to a settlement, because people got to get to the temple. Unless it's crumbling or, you know, overgrown. That's where I feel like if it's, where is it on this scale? It's interesting. It's definitely interesting. I think, I mean, I guess what's good is there's a lot of room to kind of expand that system. Okay, so here is, this is the same one. So, okay, so this first page, no, oh no, it's a little bit different. Never mind. It's not exactly the same. Okay. So now they're both on page 26 though, right? Was that wrong? Huh, I wonder if they're earlier versions. Interesting. Okay. So we're still doing 6 mile hexes. Terrain impacts the number of hexes can enter per day. PCs can undertake tasks while traveling, and they may encounter harsh weather or points of interest. All right, so we get a little bit more detail here. You got harsh weather, points of interest. They have tasks. Okay. Random encounter checks are based on the number of hexes the group enters. Aha. All right, so now we're getting a little more granular here. It's not just some base number per day. It's based on the hexes they enter. PCs and their mounts can travel for up to 8 hours a day. So now we're getting a time, because before it was just hexes. So now we're getting a time element. Mac asks, so how big do you usually make your hexes? I've been enjoying 3 mile hexes of late. That's kind of where I think I've settled, at least for now. Can always change. I was a 6 mile hex guy for a long time, but I've kind of come to really dig 3 mile hexes. Basically, because I like it as the minimum settlement size. Is your kind of village, your sort of manorial village will take up at the smallest end will take up about 1 hex. So I like that. That means that if I put a village symbol in there, they can like that's hex. And that way, basically, I like the idea of having 1 settlement per hex. So if there's a settlement, it's just 1. And once you get up to 6 mile, you can really have multiple. Because remember, you're expanding. It's like a 3 mile hex is something like 8 3/4 square miles of terrain. A 6 mile hex is 30 some odd square, like 31 square miles of terrain. So when you get to a 6 mile hex size, you can have a number of settlements. You can have a small dukedom or kingdom. You can have a whole petty kingdom inside of 1 6 mile hex with multiple settlements and all that. So what I like is with the 3 mile hex is that it's kind of the most granular when I'm looking at settlements and things like that, which, you know, besides adventure sites are the kind of the 2 most important things I want to track on my hex map are settlements and sites. And yeah, you could still have multiple sites in a single 3 mile hex, though maybe I just might say, I'm just going to have 1 in a 3 mile area. But, you know, I know that, okay, that's 1 settlement. So any, you know, kingdom, any sort of thing that takes up multiple settlements is going to have X amount of hexes involved. And I just think it's nice and neat. But but they're all tools in the toolbox. But that's kind of where I've landed. So we're doing hours now, or at least it's introducing hours as time as opposed to just looking at hexes. Food and water, 3 days. Yeah, we got that kind of part. Mounts find their rations during a rest unless in a barren location, which is another kind of added note that we didn't have before. I don't see a forage note here yet. I think these are the same. These are the same. Your basic travel movements, and then we have cost to enter. So clear is 1 hex, difficult is 2 hexes, and now we have a third type of terrain called perilous, which is 8 hexes, and then I guess, and also impassable, which they did have a note about impassable before. Yeah, the 3 miles, I think if you're looking at like what is a single village. So yeah, and I looked at different things, and Mac, if you missed the stream, there's a stream where I looked at a old wargaming magazine, which I just happen to have right at my feet here. This right here that had some fun stuff about settlement sizes and basically doing some math, and they looked at some things. They basically came up to a similar concept of, for a single kind of manorial, your sort of standard European medievalish, or at least early medievalish manorial settlement, you get about, you need about 8 or 9 miles. 8 or 9 miles basically, which includes some, forest, it's not just wall to wall farms, but it's, farming and kind of the area. And so it just really was like, it just kind of hit a bell for me, like, oh, that's really good and clean. And I can just kind of hand wave it or just sort of make it about, it's about one hex. And I just think it works really well. And then when you can look at cities, is, whatever, they could also take up 1 hex, because obviously you have 9 up to 9 square miles. So it's not like your settlements get bigger, they take up more hexes. They don't have to, because I'm also kind of on the smaller side with what I consider the cities and my thing are more kind of early medieval. So they're pretty small. So they can also fit in that same hex. But then I can look at support, how many support villages do they need? So you can think about how many hexes of support a city needs, and each one of those can just be 1 village kind of thing. So it just worked very well for me. Okay, so we got so we got terrain now. We got different types of terrain, and now we get some different encounter chances, which is also something different. So now we get unsafe, risky, and deadly, going from 1 to 6 to 3 to 6, which pretty much mirrors what you have in BX. They don't give it, they have it, they would put individual terrains in here, but here, you're gonna be able to say, I'm sure they're gonna have something to say, or you can say how deadly an area your area is, and then you can use the appropriate encounter chance. Now I get some more detail on tasks. Okay. HPC can attempt one task per day. PCs can do the same task. Each task effect is limited to once per day. The GM determines the DC each check based on the situation. Default is 12. So we have forecast. Treat the weather as 1 step better until the next rest. Well, that's interesting. That's a weird one. I don't know. So if you roll and you succeed, you forecasted the weather, which means it's better until the next rest. That's a weird one. I wonder. I don't know what that's. So you're actually making the weather. It says treat the weather 1 step better. So it's not really better, but you get to do better because you forecast it. Ian says sounds like an abstraction for preparing for the weather better. Yes. Yeah. Though, I guess it strikes me as a little weird because there's only so much you can do sometimes for the weather. Like you're traveling across whatever. Like you can't. We're not in modern times. There's not like, well, I'm gonna put the wagon wheels. I'm gonna put the snow tires on the wagon. But yeah, I get it. It's a little bit odd. It's a little bit of an odd duck. But sure. I guess the thing is here though is you're doing it for a whole day. So yeah, I guess you would treat, remember, 1 task per day means you're spending 8 to 10 hours on your forecasting. So yeah, I guess you're putting the all weather treatment on the wagon wheels. You're putting your spikes on. It's interesting. Okay, March song gives you a luck token. I don't know exactly what a luck token is, but I can guess it's something like inspiration, right? So you sing a song. And I imagine you can do this while you're traveling. I have to imagine. Push. So this is the push which we had in the other version. But it looks like they've changed the language a little bit. So increase your base hex per day by 50%. That's what we had before. PCs have disadvantage on con checks till the end of the next rest. Yeah, that's slightly different. Mike says oilcloth cloaks, watertight storage, etc. Yes, if you have all that stuff. And this is where you kind of get into a little bit of, it's got a little bit of that, which I guess some people might find kind of story gamey-ish almost. Like if you don't have any of that stuff, like if you had to, like if you ran out of the woods in the middle of the night, you still, it's fine. Yeah, if you have all your supplies, yeah, you could. If you're well supplied, you would have all that stuff. Maybe we're just kind of presuming that if you go out on an expedition, that you've got the proper cloaks and you've got watertight storage and you've got whatever. But it, like I said, it still feels to me a little bit odd. But I'm sure in play it's fine. And the other thing is you're probably doing it while you're marching, because I'm guessing you can actually do this as you're moving, like the march song. So it's not like, so it could be you're all day in camp prepping, but it also is stuff that you're just kind of putting on your raincoat while you're walking. So it is. Max says push down equals force march. Yes, that's what it is. It's like a force march. They had this before in the simple. If you missed it before, there was a simplified version we looked at, and it also had push. They just changed the language a little bit, but yes, that's what it is. It's a fast, quick march. Okay, now we get scouts. Dex or wisdom, reduce the danger level of all hexes by 1 step to the next rest. That's nice. And we got Trailblaze for each PC who succeeds, reduce the terrain type of 1d4 adjacent hexes by 1 step. Can't be used on impassable terrain. The PCs can choose which terrain to affect as they travel. Lasts until the next rest. Yeah, see, that doesn't do what the name to me reads, but sure. So, and obviously you're not changing the terrain type. You're basically you're reducing the impact of the terrain. And then what you're also doing it ahead of you, which is kind of interesting. Some of these are kind of interesting because they sort of imply that someone's going, like if you're, so I think what's happening here, I was wrong. The name does match what you're doing, but the way I guess it's interesting because you're sending someone ahead to scout, and by doing it, you're finding trails and things which make the terrain easier. The interesting thing is there's no risk. You can only do it once per day, and there's not any talk about. I mean, there's a lot of kind of things, I guess, that are kind of unknown. So, example is you send out two people to Trailblaze. You send out 2 PCs to Trailblaze. Okay. All right. Let's say you had 5 PCs. You got 5, and then you send 2 PCs off to Trailblaze, and this takes a day. Okay, so you had 5. Ugh, sorry for my horrible thing. 2 go. What happens if you have a random encounter? Ugh. Like what happens? How many PCs are there? Here is the question for all the marbles. You have 5 adventurers in your party. You send 2 to take the trailblazing task. In the middle of the day, there's a random encounter. How many PCs are in this random encounter? Well, who is it? I mean, presumably it's the party getting the random encounter, right? But are these 2, are they there for it? Are they out in some kind of nether fuzzy space where they're in one of these other terrains? Like where are they? How do you handle it? It's interesting. It's not like right or wrong. It's just kind of like, okay, like it sounds great. Okay, you're going off to do this thing for the whole day, but are you gone for the whole day? or are you just considered to be running back and forth? What is the position of your PC if then we get a random encounter during that same day? Are you there or are you not there? I suppose you can just roll dice. Even you're there, odds you're not there. But I'm not sure. Ian says this is super helpful. They've been looking to build out some exploration phase actions. Too bad we're wrapping up Shadowdark soon. Probably adapt these into the next game. Yeah, I mean, my Do Anything D6 also talks about these kinds of actions, or the Wilderness one does too. Though I think this is a nice way of kind of giving out some of these options, but I think the interesting thing here, like I said, they're good, they're very simple. They do potentially pose some interesting issues, but it is good that you can. It's kind of like giving those roles, right? It's another way of looking at those kind of roles that you see in something like the One Ring or anything. Like who's got Overwatch? Who's doing out to do these things? Who is going off to observe? But I think the way the language is written is interesting because I like the way it's. On the one hand, I like that you're getting to pick these hexes that you've kind of explored and trailblazed. At the same time, that does imply that your PC's off doing that, and there's no cost or risk to the PC. I guess there's a cost. The cost is their task, so you can't take another task. But you wouldn't imagine doing that in a dungeon, right? I don't think, right? If you wouldn't have just a PC go off and like, okay, you're going to get this other part of the dungeon. You just kind of gone ahead and looked, and we're not going to do anything. Not that the hexes have to work like a dungeon in that regard, but it's just an interesting way of handling it, and I kind of like it. I do like systems like that. At the same time, it does open up some questions potentially, but it is very simple, which I think is good. All right, so here we have the procedure now. GM determines and shares the weather. GM determines and shares the visible hexes and their danger levels. GM rolls D6 on each newly visible hex. On a 1, it has a point of interest. If the point of interest is visible, the GM shares this information. Max says, generally, trailblazing was done for moving large groups through unfamiliar terrain like regiments. Sure. Oh, no, I'm not against trailblazing as a thing. The issue is, it's not even really an issue. My question is look, if you want to go, how many battles and encounters happened because two expeditionary forces or trailblazers ran into each other, or the trailblazers ran into something. In this case, you're doing this thing, but you're in this kind of weird no space where your characters haven't actually left the party, but they kind of have. But they're doing extra movement. Those trailblazing parties are doing, if you're moving 4 hexes, whatever, 20 miles, those trailblazers are moving a lot longer than you are. There's no extra cost. There's no extra anything. And there's no danger. There's not a chance they can encounter anything when they're going. It's just, and then, but also like, where are they? Like, they're just in this weird kind of quantum space of they were kind of with the party and they're with the party. Oh, Max says, it seems like kind of a waste of time at small parties unless the whole party's along for the trailblaze. I see. I know that parties that I've GM'd have been with, we've had wagons and things like that. So I think the trailblazing part is good. And I think it could be very useful. I'm actually looking at, like, it seems really useful, especially since it reduces this. Where'd my cursor go? Oh, there it is. The reduction to terrain type is a pretty darn good bonus. Going, and what they mean by, to remember, just to recall, we're talking about hits. So if you're perilous, it goes down to difficult, it goes down to clear. So that's a pretty nice benefit, and I like the idea of it. Exhaustion is a consequence. Yeah, exhaustion could be one. Getting lost could be another one. I mean, the thing is too, like, look, I totally get this, right? The more things you add in there, the more complex it gets. And the more complex it gets, then the less it fits this goal of being a very super simple system, which I imagine they're trying to do is they want to give you something, but it's going to stay kind of simple. So you're trying to ride that line between the simplicity and the kind of interesting complications, but not making it too complicated. So I'm coming from my standpoint where I want to get in all the weeds on that, and I get where for some people it's like, that's cool, like, it's good. And we'll just mark it as read that they are going all this and coming back. But I think it does kind of ask the question, at least to me, of like, well, if they're off 2 hexes away doing nonsense, what happens when the bugbears attack at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Are they there or are they not? But I think the game is just not at that point where it wants to really deal with those. It's just going to be like, we're just going to hand wave away and just assume that whenever the bugbears attack, you happen to come back to the camp, which I think is probably overall, it's fine. It's fine. Okay, so we got this stuff. We got, all right, so roll for your points of interest. If it's visible, you share it. That's PCs make task checks in any order that they choose. Notice moving is not a task check also. And here's another thing. I would like if they spelled out that you can move while you do these things. Because movement, notice we don't have one of these as there's no moving. So I have to assume that all these could be done while you're on the move. I mean, it kind of has to be because March Song does not make any sense, really. All right, it doesn't make much sense unless because it's a March song that you're doing it and you're not moving. Of course, push for moving faster is one. So presumably, obviously, you have to be movings or otherwise you can't push moving. So I assume that moving is free other than the limitation of how many hexes you can move. And all these are done in addition to. So then the PCs make any task checks. Great. They choose the direction of travel, a number of hexes to move. They move accordingly. Okay. The GM checks for run. So I think this also feels like it's being set up so that your some kind of hex map is visible to the players, to the party, which is fine. So you're probably going to want to have, if I'm the GM, I'm going to want to have my hex map and then some kind of basically like your, I mean, a lot easier because you can just have basically an empty hex map on Hexographer or something, or something where you're basically just sharing a hex, but you're going to want to have one version of the hex map with everything on it, and then either use some kind of layering to hide so that you can kind of show, or just have a different version of the map that you're filling in as they're moving. The GM checks for random encounter in every other hex using the hex's danger level. Each time the PCs enter a hex, the GM repeats 2 to 3. In every other hex, repeat steps 4 to 8 until hex travel is completed. When all hex travel is completed, go to camping. Okay, so when it says check for random encounter in every other hex, what does that mean in every other hex? I'm not sure. What did they say were the random encounter instructions before? Random encounter checks are based on the number of hexes the group enters. I think, all right, I'm going to go on a limb, and I think what they mean by every other hex is, because there are a couple ways to read it. One, it's you're in, that's a terrible, you're in this hex. Ugh, come on. Okay, there we go. And then, you've got this many hexes out here, right? Whatever. God, my terrible. Right, you've got that. So if you're here, every other hex would be this. So, in every other hex, check for random encounter. But I don't think that's what they mean. I think they mean when you're passing encounters on the second hex you enter, you would check here. That's my interpretation. Max says March song is equal cadence. Yeah, sure. Or anything. Or you can, if you want to go with your sort of army vibes where you're setting the march, sure. It could be if you want to do more of a fellowship kind of, Lord of the Rings thing where they're singing some song to keep their spirits up. Whatever. Yeah, Arno agrees. Yeah, I think that's what they mean. It's a little bit, the way it's written, it's a little bit weird, but I have to imagine that's what they mean. Okay, now we get some more granularity with the weather. So we get terrible, bad, fair, good, beautiful with visibility, 2 hexes on the best of circumstances, no hexes in the worst. That's fine. And then terrain. Okay, so one nice thing, which is, why do they keep doing that? One thing I like, I will say, is by having things with those conditions, you can do that steps. Things getting better, things getting worse. That's cool. I dig that. I dig it. And then we have a mild season or a harsh season. Oh, that's nice. So if you want to do things on a seasonal level, is it mild? Is it harsh? That's cool. And then, oh, if the weather's terrible, it makes your rest checks worse. Arno says a marching song adds a malice to a random encounter roll as you are allowed. Yeah, that's another. You could do that a few things. I might go on the. I mean, it really depends what your marching song is. If I was running it like an army kind of thing where you're doing a cadence like Mac was talking about, then absolutely. If you're doing something more like a fellowship kind of thing, it might be whether you succeed or not. Whereas in something like the kind of Fellowship of the Ring, I think that if Aragorn or Strider is singing his song of Luthien or whatever, it might actually keep evil stuff at bay. They might be, afraid and they don't know why, kind of thing. So it really, a lot depends on what how you want to play the meaning of the song. So no, sorry. So Max asking about the steps. So let me gotta go. So when the steps are so we're looking at terrain, right? So if you come up here, we have 3 types of terrain. So if you're in perilous terrain and you subtract a step, you go to difficult. So maybe another way to, or so +1 step would go there. +2 steps would go there. Like that. That's what that means, which is pretty clever. It's a nice way of and they have this for everything. You can do that for encounter levels. These can, you can go up and down steps, up and down. Well, yeah, I mean, you could have something like this too, up and down steps kind of thing also if you wanted to, but really it's really for these terrains and these encounters. Oh, so they have harsh. So yeah, so I'm not going to read their test because I think I got it, but just to rest, that's kind of clever. It's harder to rest when the weather's terrible, which I totally get. Makes sense to me. Whoops. Now we get camping. Now, I know that Dolmenwood has camping rules. I don't know them, so I can't compare. The characters can choose to undertake camping procedures during a rest when they are outside a settlement. Use the standard resting rules. If PCs camp without a campfire, they have disadvantage in all checks. I like that. I like the idea of having one at a fire. It's good for me. Tasks. Each PC can do 1 task while camping and still get a full rest. PCs can do the same task. So you can batten down. Treat the weathers 1 step better until the end of the rest. This is a good one. Right. So, you're trying to rest in bad weather while we can spend an action and batten down the hatches kind of thing. I think with all of these, though, I would want to put in, at least for me, your fictional positioning. Okay. If you're in the middle of an open field and it's a torrential downpour, there's not much you can batten down. If you have tents, maybe a bit, but other than that, you're not. You're getting soaked. There's nowhere for you to go. So I wouldn't necessarily let players. I would want to ask those questions of, oh, we batten down. How do you batten down? And that sometimes can be the downside to having these action buttons, is because you can have players just say, oh, I'd use the batten down action, and I always want to be like, well, what exactly are you battening down? How are you doing this? If you can make it happen, great. If you can't, you can't. Cooking. Each PC that consumes a ration wakes up with 2 temporary hit points. Okay. Good. Fine. You can craft. You can make some mundane weapon ammo. I would want to use fictional positioning for that also, right? Oh, I'm making arrows. Where's the wood? Are you in the woods or somewhere nearby where you can get some wood, or are you on the top of a glacier, in which place there is no wood for you to craft your arrows out of? Entertain gets you some luck. Firewood, you can make a free campfire. You can hunt. This is where I'd like to use terrain. If you're in the desert, it's a lot more difficult to hunt than if you're in a river, in a lush wood kind of thing, but that's fine. Keeping watch. So it seems like at this point, only one PC. I guess you can reduce. It usually says all hexes by one. Well, are you moving still? You're resting. So why is it all hexes as opposed to wouldn't it just be your hex? Doesn't seem like you're having a lot of cross hex contamination. So I'm not sure why they would, or they have to say all hexes, but sure. And then you can try to predict the weather. I might make that a secret role. Just so you can mess with the players, they can be wrong. I guess this is kind of nice just because there's no numerical benefit. It's like, yeah, you got the weather. Next 3 days, that's a lot. Given that, how are you predicting the weather? You got an itch in your leg. You feel the barometric pressure change, but I don't know if that's going 3 days in advance. I mean, even with all our Doppler radar and whatnot, 3 days is dicey for weather prediction. Oh, Mac says all hexes means whatever type of hex you're in. Okay. I'll buy it. Procedure, the PCs make task checks in the order. GM checks for 2 random encounters. If an encounter occurs, the PCs who chose Keep Watch can make a wisdom check not to be surprised. Okay, so there's a reason to have multiple people doing the Keep Watch, and that is so that anyone else will be surprised. Which is interesting. Just a different way of doing it. And that's okay. So this, wait a minute. Oops. All right, now we have fast travel. So fast traveling, you can fast travel if you're going between 2 hexes you've previously entered. They must use a path they've already traveled. They can also fast travel between 2 hexes when there's a clear path such as a road. So this seems to be kind of maybe a little bit point crawly-ish. Distance fast travel uses abstracted distances instead of hexes. Hexes themselves are abstract distances, but okay. The GM should factor in the travel method: close, 1 to 3 days away; near, up to a week away; far, up to 2 weeks away. This is basically a point crawling part now. Procedure: if the PCs decide to fast travel, the GM determines the distance, rations, and time needed for the journey. The PCs immediately pay the ration costs. They must permanently sacrifice 1 item for each ration they lack. Ooh, treat bundled gear such as arrows as 1 item. That's interesting. So you got to know how much you need, otherwise you're losing gear. The GM checks if 1 random encounter occurs on the journey using the listed probability. If an encounter occurs, the GM determines a random day and time for it to take place. And finally, after resolving any random encounters, the PCs complete their journey and arrive. All right. I don't dislike this necessarily, but I'd want some more. I guess it really depends on the kind of campaign you're running. I feel like if you invest on making trails and doing things, I totally would give you some kind of fast travel thing, but not just if you've just gone through once. I don't think, but that's me. But again, very simple. And depending on if you're close, near, or far, is how much rations, the time, and then the encounters. So quick and simple. And I suppose if you just wanted to use this, you could. If you really just wanted to kind of hand wave a lot of the hex crawling stuff and get people from A to B, you absolutely could do that. Safe hexes, making safe. If the PCs wish to return to a hex, they must declare it. Return a hex safe. They must declare it. Then the GM generates a number of threats in the hex based on its danger level. If the hex has a dangerous point of interest, it is the first threat. Okay. So unsafe has 1 threat, risky has 2 threats, deadly has 3 threats. The GM can generate remaining threats on page 32. All right, we'll get there soon enough. Success: if the PCs alleviate each threat, the hex becomes safe. All right. Timer: the hex remains safe while the PCs or their allies occupy it. I like that. It's a good note. Or their allies means that you could bring in some people like mercs to watch the area. Otherwise, hex remains safe for a number of weeks. equal to the PC's average party level. That's kind of nice. I just like it because it's a nice, clean, easy number. The PCs or their allies reset the timer if they ran to the hex. Makes sense. If the timer runs out, the hex reverts to a random danger level. All right. Max says the plan to continue yours, hers, and other designers in AD&D. Yeah, I think a mix is nice. Everyone's got different things to offer, but that's fine. It's all good in the hood, but this is cool. And now we have our threat generator with we got a lot of blanks, and it might be so the order of these is interesting. To put descriptor, then behavior, then threat. Where I would have put descriptor, threat, behavior, like hungry, goblinoids, pillaging. But I guess they have it hungry, pillaging, goblinoids. That makes sense. Angry, kidnapping, humanoids, betrayed, stealing, beasts. Okay. So it's just a number of, oh, they got a whole bunch. Okay, they must mean you to fill these in. Or, okay, here's the other thing I was forgetting about is, remember I said I got this downloaded? This is probably not the complete book. Because I know that they these are sold, and this PDF was put up for free on their Discord. So I imagine that maybe these are just incomplete, because I can't imagine they're giving you this huge table and they're just giving us that much. It wasn't clear to me before, but it feels like that's probably what this is. So if you have, or I assume it's out, but I don't know the actual full version of, what are they calling these? Curse Scroll 4. I have to imagine these will probably be filled. And then, yeah, so that's it. And then we get a collection of ideas. Treasure map leads to the Gate of Boiling Doom. It was a trap, of course. All right. Oh, okay. Ian says it's not filled out yet. Okay. Yeah, I don't follow this stuff, so I'm not familiar with that. So that makes a lot more sense. That makes me feel better about those earlier tables where I was thinking, why are all these blanks? Why are all these blanks? Let's see. Max says, I do really like your system, though. I think you put more thought into it than just about anyone else. And the other designer is Flint Fireforge, another YouTube GM. He's got some good bits, too. Oh, cool. Hey, Brian. Brian says, the Gate of Boiling Dew, Mountain Dew. Do they call it Boiling Dew? Boiling Dew. Boiling Doom. Doom, not Dew. Second one is a buried treasure chest left by the pirate queen, Red Maria. All right. So I'm definitely going to look at some of this stuff. I might tweak. I mean, I have some tweaks to make of Wood and Wold anyway, and I probably will look at some of these. Some of it is good. I think she really has a very clean layout and I like her. Not the layout so much. I think she has good thought for how to organize it, right? With giving some different things. Some of the language, that's when you get to be trying to be really lean and concise, like she is, just you can trim too far and you can end up in some spots where, like, boy, another word or two would really help clarify, or maybe using a different word, I think. But overall, it's good. It's good. Ian likes the tasks. I think they're good too. I think those are definitely some areas where I might want to flesh out, just tweak it a little bit. Like, the tasks are good. I think it does raise some questions about where people are at different times. What exactly does it mean? Kind of thing. But I also like the breakdown in using turns instead of doing things on days, because it just makes some things a little bit awkward at times. But yeah, that was it. So I guess this stuff's not near to coming out. So I presume. So I have to imagine this is very, very beta. So don't look at this as exactly what's going to come out whenever Curse Roll number 4 does end up coming out, because it's probably going to look somewhat different. But it was fun to look at. It gives me some food for thought for how I will be tweaking things to try to stay kind of. I'm not trying. Like I said, I'm not trying to do the exact Shadowdark vibe. I'm trying to give a little bit more of some things, but I do want to keep in mind the kind of what people like Shadowdark for. Because if they wanted to play something that was a lot more granular and crunchy, then they would. They're playing Shadowdark because they like some of that streamlining stuff and some of that organizational stuff. So I think I'm going to I'll do some tweaks in order to kind of bring what I'm doing a little bit more in line, I think, maybe with what she's doing, and we'll see how that works. But cool. Well, thanks everyone for hanging out and with me while I read through that. Max says there is a Curse Scroll channel. Cool. I am on the Discord. So that's good. I can check that out. And I mentioned it at the top of the stream. I'll mention it again. I'm going to be out starting tomorrow for the rest of the week. This channel will probably be pretty quiet unless I just pop in an impromptu short or something. It's probably going to be pretty quiet. I have some videos. I have one video scheduled for the other channel for tomorrow, and then I've got some shorts popping in. I might try to get another video for Friday. We'll see. It's already almost 3 o'clock, so I don't know if I'm going to make it, but we'll see. Other than that, folks, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you're watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye now.